talk about design for Android. Over to you, Kamal.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Osha. Thanks for the warm introduction. Hi guys. My name is Kamal. I'm GD for Google Assistant. Apart from that, I'm working as a technology lead at Infosys and also running GDG Chandigarh as an organizer. So today I'll be discussing how do we design for Android specifically. Uh, so let's. I'll be not taking much of your time. It's a very short, slot that I have been given. So I'll be covering best practices or what should we focus on in order to design uh, good screens or good UI with respect to Android only. So let's get started. Yeah, so very first thing that comes into our mind, how do I design for Android? There are multiple Android devices, right, across the globe available with different screen sizes and dimensions that we need to capture whenever we think of designing Android UI specifically. Okay, how we were designing earlier? We were using linear layouts, relative, frame, or combinations of these three containers whenever we think that we need to design a particular UI in Android, right? So in order to match our designs with the frameworks or the, if I say the tools, Zeppelin or Figma that we use to Android designs, so we use these combinations of these three containers mostly, that is linear, relative, and this frame. But how we are doing right now, how we are designing screens in the current era, that is the question. Yeah, so the very first thing that comes into our mind whenever we think of following standard guidelines which are available for Android, right? It is very similar to web as well. We have material guidelines available in web, and similar guidelines we also have for Android as well. Those are material guidelines. If I say very specifically about what do we understand by material guidelines, it's a kind of Bhagavad Gita or a Bible for all the Android UI UX developers. Okay, so when I say Bhagavad Gita or Bible, I mean you don't have to do anything. You don't simply have to do anything. Just simply follow the principles or the process as a foundation of your own kits. That will simply lead to a good Android designs. Okay. Yeah. So what do we understand by material design whenever we talk about material guidelines or material principles in web or in Android specifically? What do we understand by material designs? These are simply a set of principles, available for all the Android UI developers just to follow, that will lead to a good Android UI UX design. Uh, it's if I just sum up this about Android design or Android guidelines, it's basically a principle that we need to follow for every motion, visual, or even in respect to icons as well. If you want to explore more about Android designs, just go to material.io slash developer and Android, where you will find all the guidelines related to Android UI UX and even icons. Yeah. Whenever this is a code that I have put in one of my slides, like whenever we need to think like a developer and be creative like a designer as well. If we are Android developer, okay, we do get the designs from designers, UI UX team, right, in Zeppelin or in Figma tools that we need to convert into Android applications. But how do we proceed with that nowadays? Yes, we do. We did have, or we still have, relative, linear, and frame combo to achieve particular UI UX designs. But how do we do that nowadays? I'll simply say use constraint layout. It's nothing, a view group available in Android, which will allow you to position size components in a very flexible ways, which will help you to basically adjust your UI UX across platforms, different screen dimensions, and it will automatically scale if you use this Android constant. So I have specifically mentioned about Android constant because I'll be taking these into you guys into much detail or depth about how do we use constants and how does it affect Android UI UX. Yeah. So this is it, using a scale constraint. Like if you see here, we are using a scale constraint in this particular image or a GIF that I have put in. So use scale or fixed height and width if you want your components to scale as per the device dimension. Okay, if I want a particular component to be scaling with respect to dimensions, I'll be definitely going for the constant, and we should. This is a kind of best principle going on. That's what we are using in the industry right now. So always keep in mind about scalable sizes. And whenever you are designing UI components and Android, use scalable sizes to make your UI components automatically scale as per dimensions of the screen. Yeah, this is another example of best fitted example of constraint nowadays, using this scale size or to vertically grow your text. You can see if we apply constraints, right, and use these fixed size constraints, if your screens or dimensions are varying across different devices or platforms, you can see the text is getting automatically adjusted. So this is the best example that we can find. So it applies a particular behavior just to wrap the content as it grows or reduce on horizontal axis in this example particularly. Yeah, so this is another way of improving your designs nowadays. But if I see these vector images, or how do we earlier used to design Android using images, were just to use, we were using PNGs or basically JPGs as well, right? Putting different PNGs into different dimension folders, maybe I guess, right, XHDPI, DPI, and all these folders we were utilizing to make our UI UX compact across different platforms. But nowadays, it's a one way around that. Just put use one vector or SVG image that is preferable to make your UI UX look cool or scalable across different platforms, and obviously it will help you to reduce the app size as well. So obvious advantage of using these vector drawables is the size footprint of your APK for sure. The difference in the size of an app if you use these vectors versus pretty images, if I call it, instead of having several packages images that is for different DPI resolutions that we were used to do earlier, when these SVGs or vectors were not available. But now, since these SVGs are being supported from very long time in Android, it's not a new thing. But since we are discussing about Android UI UX and how to design in Android, so this is an important aspect that I wanted to cover specifically in Android. So have a single file for your particular icon or a background image, if I say, and this SVG will work across platforms and different screen UI different screen sizes for sure. So yeah, so this is all about Android UI UX from my side, and particularly, yeah, just to sum it up, if I summarize whatever we discussed in this this short period, or this short presentation, the very first thing whenever we think of UI UX, how to design screens in Android, we need to think of material design, material guidelines. So very first step, if we are starting to build a screen for Android, we should follow the material guidelines. That is, what should be the correct size of an icon, right? If I talk about a launcher icon or a particular icon to be displayed in the app as well, so that should be of that should be following material guidelines. If you are not handling that thing, or your UX designer is providing you icons, so that icon should follow a particular guidelines of material. A particular use case will be of notification icons, right? So we used to face a big problem. We Whenever you get a notification in the notification panel, you see a white kind of icon, right? If that icon is not following material guidelines, then you will not be able to see that icon clearly. But if that icon is following particular material guidelines, you'll be able to see that notification icon in the notification panel for sure. This is a problem which is being available above Marshmallow. If icons are not following material guidelines, the notification in the notification panel, it will be displayed as a white icon for sure. And apart from icons, we do have with sizes defined for particular screens that we are using. Okay, that comes under material guidelines that should be followed in order to get a perfect UI UX for Android. Then the second thing that is very important with respect to Android UI designing, that is 360 pattern that we say. There are multiple libraries available from API, DP perspective, right? Scalable pixel, that we call it in Android. There are different libraries available to handle those things for sure. But whenever you are designing a standard Android screen, you should follow a 360 screen as a standard screen, and make your design compact as per 360, because whatever is being built on top of 360 looks perfect on across devices. So if you are developing a huge Android application or enterprise application, or a small application for an organization or for self as well, you'll find all the discipline or Figma designs are aligned to these 360 devices only, and rest you need to modify accordingly. So once you start building Android UI UX, you'll get designs from Zeppelin or Figma with respect to 360 only. The third thing, when you once you start building your Android UI UX, try to use constant layout as much as possible, because it will automatically scale across different dimensions, and different devices across having different dimensions for sure. So it is easy to use. You can have you The common mistake that I have seen across developers are doing, they are using constant layout as a parent, but in between they are mixing relative and linear layout as well, just to get the work done basically. So don't mix that. If you are using constant layout in a particular file, so make all your widgets aligned using constant only, and avoid using relative and linear the most. And the last and the most important part in Android UI UX is the images part. So whenever you are building Android applications, try to avoid using PNG images. Okay, earlier we were using 9 patch images just to make sure that that those images automatically compact or scale themselves with the screen dimensions different across different screen dimensions. But now we have SVGs to do that stuff. And the most important thing in SVGs are they are a very small in size. If I say in KBs, you can get it. So obviously it will help you to reduce your APK size for sure. So try to use SVGs images in your Android application as much as you can. So if I'm sure if you follow these four small but important steps, whenever you think of Android UI UX or designing a good Android screen, you'll get a good success in terms of good Android screen for sure. Yeah, so this is pretty much from my side. These are the small principles that I wanted to cover. I know it's very short and very brief, right? So with respect to time, but these are the important principles that I wanted to capture very quickly, so that you can get a fair idea how or what are the guidelines that we should follow. So I hope you did make a note of these guidelines, and we'll catch up during the Q&A if you have any queries regarding Android UI UX or any other thing. Yeah, thanks. Over to you, Rich.